So obviously, Christine, most people do not have skeletons in their home, right? And they don't necessarily have these references, these landmarks within themselves. And so when they're going to go into our libraries in Feldenkrais First and take these lessons, at some point in time, they're going to hear terms that are not necessarily familiar to them. And they're going to have to learn how to locate these, these skeletal prominences, these terms for themselves. There's nothing wrong whatsoever in taking a lesson and stopping the lesson and Googling and just simply looking so that they can become familiar with these terms. Because there will be terms that will be given in the lessons that they're going to have to find their way through. Now, the lessons oftentimes are descriptive enough that you'll find them. But for this lesson today, we're going to be studying some different parts of your skeleton that oftentimes are not a part of our consciousness. In most cases, people will tell you that their heel, because of the way they stand, oftentimes pronated, that when they walk, the pressure moves from their heel toward their first toe. So they have an impression that their heel points to their first toe. But if you look carefully here, you can see that your heel does not point to the first toe. What's the line of force? The direction of your heel, your calcaneus, through the cuboid. You can see that there's a line that comes through from your heel toward the fourth toe. Now, this is called the lateral arch. And we're not going to go into great detail about all this. You can find, in Feldenkrais First, you can find references to these conversations so that you can look at these things in great detail. But you are going to need to have a sense of being able to find this lateral arch, this line of support for yourself at different times during the lesson today. Okay? All right. And the other thing that we're going to look at, I'm going to use the term greater trochanter and lesser trochanter. Yeah? Because again, in most people, if you ask them, where are your hips? They'll refer to their waist, actually. Yeah? Very few people actually have a clear sense of where their hip joint actually is. If you ask people to point to where their hip joint is, oftentimes they'll point to the greater trochanter. So that's this prominence of bone that it's built this way because this is the way the musculature can attach to it. Why is it that these legs, when you look at the leg, you can see that it's not straight? It must be shaped so that you can walk on various surfaces. Yeah, we don't walk on flat ground. Yeah, so your system has to be able to take force through the length of the skeleton in order to adapt to changing surfaces. Yeah. So for this lesson, we're going to ask about the greater trochanter. We're going to ask about what is called the lesser trochanter. So the lesser trochanter is obviously on the inner part of the thigh. And many of you will have heard of the psoas muscle. This is the attachment for where the psoas attaches. You don't have to know that musculature, but you do have to be able to associate to the three-dimensional sense of your thigh and being able to know the difference between the inside and the outside. Great. And where your femoral head is. Because your femoral head is going to be resting in the hip joint. And so we will be studying this relationship of your leg to your pelvis as a part of this lesson.
Great.
So please come and stand so that your feet are more or less supported. That's it. Yeah. Gently, just simply squat as if you're going to lift something from the ground. That's enough, just a little. And unfold yourself in such a way that as you unfold, you come up onto your tiptoes as if to reach. That's it. And you could fold yourself so your arms fold down and toward the ground. And then as you unfold yourself, you lift your arms up and through yourself and sneakily reaching up to the ceiling. So you're playing with your balance. You're playing with folding and unfolding. That's nice. And by the way, when you're folding toward the floor, are you folding down or are you lifting yourself to the floor? It's again, this question. It's either It's either a moment where you fall and have to grab, or whether you can consistently move from point to point. Please come and lie with the floor. So we have a little bit of a reference movement, so you have a sense of your being coordinated. Lie with the floor for a moment so that you can perceive the sense of how the floor is supporting you this morning. Just for a moment, make a small movement of rolling your head. It's not a question of how far you roll, it's just a question of finding, when you initiated the movement, which way direction did you roll? And again, you watch something that's interesting as you roll your head. Is there a tendency when you roll your head, on which side is it that your eyes tend to move down? That you look down? At some point in time as you roll, does it change? Do you look down on both sides, or do you look up on one side and down on the other? And then when you come across the center line, or the line that's not right and not left, this line that we call the center line, something changes. There's a way in which, as you go across the center line, your eyes tend to look up a little bit. Yes? So it's an interesting neurological asymmetry within yourself. Again, something that's unknown to you probably. It's probably not an exploration you've ever been asked before or questioned before. So you listen to the sensation of your shoulders being supported. And of course, with this, there's always some way in which your shoulders are supported by the floor differently. You notice as you tune your attention to your shoulders being supported, to your ribs and your spine being supported, which side of your back do you sense has more support?
My right side.
Yes, so it goes along with what we discovered yesterday when we started this movement of rolling from one side to the other. And you can sense for yourself the way that your pelvis is engaged with the floor and the way that you experience your legs being supported by the floor. Very gently, organize yourself in such a way that your feet are supported by the floor. Now, again, I ask you this question, are your feet standing on the floor? But if I ask you to organize yourself in such a way that you sense the floor supporting you, what do you notice?
Feels lighter. My hips feel more engaged.
So if your feet are on the floor, then you have a different way in which you sense that you're lifting through your leg, as opposed to having a sense that the floor supports your feet and the floor is lifting through you, or you have the sense of lifting through yourself. So make that experiment. Lift your leg as if your feet are on the floor and notice that there's a microsecond in which you have to gather something to do it. That's slightly different. Choose for yourself which leg you would like to keep standing with your foot supported by the floor and which leg you would like to have to be long with the floor. That's nice. And take a moment and you can play with your foot. In other words, bring it closer, bring it away, bring it to the inside, bring it to the outside, wherever it is, so that you have a sense for yourself that your foot is supporting you just right. And then with your foot supporting you just right, can you begin to organize yourself in such a way that you're going to roll your pelvis to the left? Sensorially, let's begin to observe how you internally organize the lesson. So once again, begin the movement and watch. In what direction does your foot move? As you begin to make the movement, does your foot move inwardly or outwardly? Where do you find the support?
Near my heel.
Near your heel. Now watch for yourself as you make the movement, in what direction does your knee move? Do you increase the pressure of your foot on the floor? Does your knee move away from you?
I do increase the pressure on the floor.
So if you pay close attention to the where it is that you are, how would you make the movement if there was a laser beam that was attached from your knee to the ceiling, and you had to make this movement in such a way that the laser beam on the ceiling didn't move, that you have to engage your pelvis to roll yourself to the left, but your laser beam, no, it's on your knee. Your knee has to stay completely stable. So it's a question. Here's the question. If you had a scales under your foot, is it possible for you to lift your pelvis away from your foot in such a way as to not increase the pressure with your foot on the floor? It's a funny way. It's almost like you're drawing your heel to you. It invites you to activate your leg and your pelvis in a very, very different way. So make the movement 3 different ways now. Come back and make the movement in such a way that one time you make the movement and you turn your knee slightly inward, you rely on the inner part of your foot and roll and press the floor slightly that way, which is oftentimes the way that this movement takes place. The next time you make the movement, make it so that you increase the pressure of your foot with the floor, your knee going away from you, but lifting your knee only going toward your foot. It doesn't necessarily roll outward. Yes. And the third way of making this movement in such a way as if not to increase the pressure of your foot with the floor, in such a way that you engage yourself to lift yourself away from your knee staying directed to the ceiling, but you simply lift yourself away from. That's it. And as you make that movement, please, will you lengthen your arm, your left arm overhead, and imagine now that you're making a movement to come away from your heel and lengthen your arm and return. Now, watch as you make this movement of returning, whether you simply keep engaging your ribs, keep engaging your opposite leg, engage yourself so that you lift yourself back to the floor. So the movement becomes reversible, that you lift yourself away from the floor and you continually lift yourself back to the floor. So is it easier for you to sense into your right leg and into your right foot, or is it easier to engage with your senses to your left leg? Is it similar? Is it...
Probably more into my right. It also feels a little bit longer, perhaps.
Yeah, you've had an opportunity to play with the way the muscles are tonified. Great. So take a moment and bring your left leg to standing. Again, take a second and explore where you want your heel and your foot. But you'll notice that as you do that, there's something in this property of movement. Remember, we looked at this line between your heel and your fourth toe. So as you're making this experiment of lifting away from your foot and coming rolling to your right, watch the line of the way that you interact between your heel and your fourth toe with the floor. There's a clear interaction that if you're really going to have power to make this movement and so that you can experiment with, it's a sense that you come away from the fourth toe to the heel. It's almost like you're trying to slide your heel towards you rather than pushing away. So go back and forth. Once press the floor, increase the pressure with your foot on the floor, and the next time have the sense that you're drawing your pelvis away from your heel. And take a moment and sense how you lie with the floor now.
Feels more even between my left and my right.
We didn't take much time to explore your breath before we started. But oftentimes as we go through these things, somehow the inner dimension of in your torso begins to have another dimensional sense. You may find that your breath is coming and going more easily. Maybe yes, maybe no. It's something to observe as you make these movements. Or even with this short experiment, find out what it's like for you to squat toward the floor and lift to the ceiling. Sense for yourself if there's not some difference. How's that for you so far?
Feels good. I feel less on my heels, more on my forefoot. Yeah, feels really good.
Thank you for all for attending and being here. Hope you enjoyed and feel free to contact us or hit here to subscribe. All right. Take care. Thank you.